Hello, my name is Wes Harville, and I'm the Rosarian at Jackson Perkins.
Hi, and I'm Diane Summers, President of the American Rose Society.
And today we're getting together to talk about winterizing your roses. Some of the topics we're going to talk about is why is it important, the timing, winterizing techniques, a garden cleanup, tips for spring, and then we'll end up with some questions and answers.
So let's talk about why it's important to winterize your roses. And clearly, what winterizing means will be different depending upon the plant zone you're in and how cold it gets in your climate. So knowing that zone is going to be very important, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Why we winterize is because some of our roses are going to be more susceptible to colder temperatures, and they could be damaged by those colder temperatures. And of course, we all want to make sure that our roses make it through the winter months and we can enjoy them the next season. And so to that point, not all roses need winterizing. And in fact, that's one of the key characteristics that breeders, rose hybridizers, are looking for today is roses that are hardier for colder climates because they know that's what the gardener is looking for their garden.
It's really interesting because sometimes you think about roses and you think everything for every rose is always the same, and roses vary dramatically in their ability to adapt to different climates. So it is real important to consider your zone when you're looking for a rose for your climate.
So here's the plant hardiness zone that we referred to just a bit ago, and you're probably familiar with your planting zone dependent upon where you live. You can see there's a reference to a site at Jackson Perkins where you can actually make sure you can clearly identify your planting zone. And those zones are based upon the average minimum annual temperature. Remember that I said average, right? We know every year is just a little bit different. Mother Nature loves to keep us on our toes related to that. But it is important when you're selecting plants, be it roses or other plants, that you understand those zones so that you're choosing plants that are going to work out best in your garden.
And it looks like we have two examples of two different levels of detail on the zone maps. The first and main picture is a very broad zone map, and then you can go into the USDA zone map that breaks it down very specifically into zone 5, A, B, C, and so on.
So let's talk a little bit about what's really happening inside our roses. I think that is just so important because it will help us understand clearly the changes in the temperature and when and why you should be doing something, okay? So once cooler temperatures start and the amount of light during the day is starting to drop a little bit, plants know that it's time to get ready for winter, right? And so what they'll start to do is they'll start to really build up more carbohydrates and sugars in their cell structure that actually helps them to withstand those dry, cold temperatures of winter. So that's like the high level version without making us all have to be scientists here. And so what's important as we look at that is then understanding what your plant zone is like, what your weather temperatures are like, and that should generally help you in defining, what you need to do and when you need to do it. This was a fun chart that I created that shows those average low temperatures in Colgate, Wisconsin. That's where I live, and in Greenville, South Carolina. So that's where Wes lives. Wes you're in a zone 7, correct?
Zone 8, actually.
Zone 8, lucky you. I'm in a zone 5. And so it's interesting when I talk to Wes about planting zones and winterizing your roses or protecting your roses for this time of year, because I wouldn't have thought zone 8 does much of anything, but I was wrong. So Wes certainly has to take care of his roses, even though he is in a warmer climate than I am. You see from the chart how whether the temperatures are going to fall. That's what we would expect into the January timeframe, and then they're going to go back up. So in October, we have that beginning of the plants starting to build up their carbohydrate reserve. And then in November and December, they're going to continue to do that as long as they can, which means until there's some really hard frosts, right? And then in January, it's really the maximum amount of sugars that they have. And then that sugar reserve will start to deplete. And by March, it's really gone. So if we have a long fall, like in my zone 5, that really means that those plants have from October to maybe December to build up that carbohydrate reserve. And so their opportunity to withstand cold winter temperatures is going to be stronger versus if we start to get hard frosts in October, then they might not have that same amount of reserve established. At the same point, when you think about this, if you start to winterize your roses and you decide you're going to cut them all down and cover them, and we'll talk about those things in more detail in a little bit. If you do that in October, again, then you're reducing the opportunity of the plant to build up those reserves. Now, maybe it won't matter. It depends again on the temperatures in your climate, and every year is a little bit different. But hopefully that helps to help explain that cycle of what you do when. And I wouldn't want to forget that since that winter protection that the plant builds up starts to dissipate in January and it's gone in March. So when we have those late freezes in the springtime, that can be the most damaging to our plant, more so than what the cold temperature is in January. It's those freezing, thawing cycles that we see in March that can really hurt the plant.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do in the Deep South is moderate those extreme temperature changes, both in the soil and in the air when we deal with winterizing roses.
And
so really,
oh, go ahead. Well,
sorry to interrupt it. So really, winterizing your roses starts well before winter, obviously. When you're building your plan for your garden going into the fall, you start looking at late summer, early fall, and you want to start making sure that your plants have plenty of water, making sure they have mulch around the base, and pull back on your trimming and stop fertilizing.
Right. And I would suggest it starts even before then. In my zone 5, when I am planting my rose bush, I do want to plant it with any graft, if it's a grafted rose bush, a couple inches below the soil line. That will help in protecting the plant so that in the spring, if I have to cut those canes way down, I still have a great opportunity to save my plant. And as Wes said, the more healthy your plant is going into winter, the better off it is. So that means healthy plants throughout the season, right? If it's late fall and you've had a very dry fall, you might want to make sure that there's adequate moisture in the soil. If you've had some disease or insect and you've lost a lot of leaves on your plant, well, then again, it's going to be have more challenges, I guess, in building up that carbohydrate reserve that you want. So if you have a healthy plant going into fall, then your chances are that it's going to overwinter very well or much higher.
And keep in mind that in some of the southern climates, even though they stop growing, they can maintain their leaves and go semi-dormant. And anytime a plant maintains its leaves, it's still going to lose water. So water is very important in the Deep South and maintaining your roses over the winter. So when I start looking at when I look at this, I start thinking, oh my gosh, this is so different from where I live.
Yeah, these are some examples from my garden, basically. For me, it's about covering up some of the base of the plant, and you can see you can do that easily with leaves, with compost, that sort of thing. I would say also that that bottom picture of the concrete blanket is something that becoming a bit popular here in my zone, because it's really a construction blanket. You can buy them at the big box stores. But again, it just helps the plant from going through, it really insulates the plant. So it still freezes, but it's not going to have those freezing and thawing cycles.
Well, I noticed that slide up there with the snow in there, and it says that's a great insulator. I would think most people would think snow would cause problems for roses.
No, it really is a great insulator. In fact, one year, just a few years ago, we had a lot of snow in Wisconsin, and my roses were so well protected, well above any of the mulch or whatever I put on those canes, that you could just see the green so much higher on the plant. So even in the springtime, if you get a quick snowfall, I'm not so worried about it, because again, the snow is really protecting that plant overall. I would say, as we're talking about covering a rose bush, many people use those styrofoam rose cones, and those are acceptable to use. Again, it's the same thing. You're trying to protect the plant from freezing, thawing cycles, right? But when you buy that cone, get it home and cut some holes in it, like at least 2 to 3 inches in diameter, all around the cone, because you really want to have air circulation still happening. Otherwise, if you've opened up your cones in the spring and seen a lot of mold on them, that might be why. And put a brick on top of it, and that way it'll keep the cone in place on those windy days.
I like that concrete blanket because it just seems like it will help moderate the temperature swings, because it's utilizing some of the consistent temperatures that are in the soil. Is that what you find, Diane?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're easy to put on. You just, you take it and you roll it out. Some of our really gardeners with a lot of roses have even purchased custom ones. That's going a bit too far. Hey, I just use the ones from the big box store, and they've been quite effective. You do need to make sure you put some rodent control under there, or they'll have a wonderful winter under there as well and eat the canes on your roses.
I know that sounds kind of crazy, but they can do a lot of damage. You talked about sugars and carbohydrates earlier, but those, especially rats and mice, will just girdle that cane trying to get at the sugars in the growth layer of that rose stem.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, Diane, do you have any special techniques? Most of these pictures relate to bush and varieties. Do you have anything you do with climbers or trees that is different?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We've chatted about this in the past, Wes. When climbing roses, you really need to protect those canes, unless, of course, you're buying climbers that are going to be hardy in your area. So frankly, I buy climbers that are hardy in zone 5. And I don't have much dieback on them throughout the winter, and I don't do anything to protect them. With rose trees, what you want to do is you really have to, for my zone 5, I bring those into my garage for the winter. I do that with some of my other roses. Anything that I've been growing in a container, you can't just leave that container outside. So I bring those into the garage. I give them about a cup of water every month, and they seem to make it quite well through the winter. The only thing is you have to be very careful when you take them out in the springtime, so that you get them gradually used to sunlight as well as wind. And most of my shrubs, I don't do anything to, because most of them, again, they're fairly winter hardy.
And that's a good point. You were talking about the wind. The wind can do a lot of damage. The wind can reduce the temperature, the actual air temperature, and cause more damage than you expect. A wind can push the bushes or trees or climbers around and cause them to have root damage. So, securing those trees in a warmer climate with a stake, or securing the climbers so that they don't blow in the wind, can save you a lot of headaches if you have a windy winter.
Mhm.
I was talking earlier about mulch, and I know that's a general term, but what kind of mulches do you use when you are winterizing your roses? Is it the same thing you do when you're protecting them from moisture loss in the summer?
No, I tend to use leaves, and you can see that in the upper left-hand corner because I actually have a nice woods by me that has a lot of wonderful oak leaves, and those are good for the soil as well. And you can see I've created a paper collar out of newspaper, and I just dump leaves into them, and it's very good. It allows for the moisture and for the air to flow through it, but it is still actually protecting those canes. You'll also see that there's twine wrapped around the bush there, and that's intentional. I do that with all of my roses, even if I'm not winter protecting them, other than a really big shrub, right? But for most of my roses, I am using twine to bring all those canes together. Just like you said, those winter winds that could be whipping those canes and breaking the plant down at the base, that helps to protect it a bit as well. I tend to use more of bark in the summertime for my garden for mulch.
I just want to encourage people to use well-rotted mulches. Mulches that are green can cause issues and actually deplete the soil, but cause heating and cause problems with plants down the road. So you want to use well-rotted mulches when you're working during the summer or during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
What about fall cleanup? How important is that to you, Diane?
It is important to try to remove any diseased leaves and things like that from your garden, especially, and even, weeds that might have been growing in your garden. You want your garden to be as clean as possible going into winter. If you've had some experience with some fungal diseases like a black spot, that will overwinter. And so you might as well get rid of it in the fall so it doesn't become a problem for you in the springtime. I will tend to do one last spraying for fungal diseases before the temps get too cold, generally in early October.
Yeah, I think a good fall cleanup is really important to get rid of those spores. They're soft and hard spores that can cause issues in the spring, and it just gives you a jump on spring.
Mm-hmm. And you do want to stop fertilizing. I think we mentioned that earlier. I tend to stop at the end of August. Again, I don't want my plant trying to push out new growth and more blooms. I really want it to work on that carbohydrate reserve that we talked about earlier. So you don't also do a lot of pruning, because pruning of your roses in the late fall will generally, and that could stimulate some growth as well. Now, some people have taken that pretty far and said, oh, I can't cut any of my beautiful roses in my garden. And well, I think that's going a little too far. I like my roses, and this is a great time of the year to bring them in the house. But I don't do any kind of, real drastic pruning on my bushes, frankly, until spring. Sometimes I guess I'm a lazy gardener and I know I have to prune it in the spring. So why would I prune it in the fall too? That's double work from my perspective. If I have a plant I am going to prune, I wait until December or January to do it. So we've talked a lot about winter protection, but now let's talk about spring. Be careful to pull back your winter protection. I've told many people that, you can really damage your plants by pruning them too early. If you let them go a little bit later, it's not going to hurt the plant. And so I actually start middle of April, or it could be as late as May. It really depends upon our spring. Yeah, this past year, I did not start pruning my roses until the middle of May because we were having so much colder weather that once you prune that plant, once you uncover it, and it's going to start to grow. Remember, it doesn't have any winter protection left in it. And if in fact, all of a sudden we get those cold temperatures, freezing temperatures, you'll want to make sure that you go and cover your plants for that period of time. a nice indicator plant in our area is the forsythia. So you see the forsythia bloom and okay, the forsythia is blooming. It should be about time to start to prune my roses. But, if you think about it, wait until many of those hard frosts are gone. Again, that plant will start to grow once you uncover it, once it's getting more daylight. You've got some nice warmer temperatures and that sun is shining on it. And Mother Nature, she can be kind of unpredictable in the springtime.
Well, you've talked a lot about what to do when you're pruning your roses, but do you have a rule of thumb for how much you'll cut back your roses each spring?
Oh, great question. Well, in my climate, I am pruning them back to where I see healthy green canes. Again, because I don't do a lot of covering. I cover my hybrid teas, but most of my other plants I do not cover. And so you're going to have like black and dead canes on the plant, and I want to clean that out. I also want to clean out any twiggy kind of growth. And I have found even if they went through the winter really well, I probably want to cut off at least a third of the plant because otherwise you'll start to get very spindly growth and not the shape you want, and perhaps not the bloom quality that you want as well.
Are you real particular about, how high you cut above a bud, or if the bud is an inside or outside bud, or do you just go in and cut a third off as a rule?
Generally, you're always looking to have that plant grow outside. So you're cutting so that the next buds are growing outside the cane, outside the plant. Not so particular in the springtime, although in the middle of your plant, I do try to prune out any small canes. I'm trying to open the plant up already so that it's going to get a lot of air circulation for the springtime, but not too particular in the spring. I have over 200 rose bushes and my goal is to get them all done. And it's amazing how quickly they'll rebound in the spring and they'll start to leaf out pretty quickly.
Well, I noticed you mentioned forsythia. That's a rule in the South also, is that you want to trim about the time the forsythia are coming. Sometimes it's a little earlier, but if you look at those canes really closely, you can see those buds actually start to color, the redden up or turn purple and start to push out. And soon after that, you're going to have stems and leaves developing. So
that's right. And these photos again are from my garden. So this is early spring. The bottom photo, there was no winter protection on this plant. And again, you can see how well it's growing. So, roses have come a long way, and there's just so many wonderful options today that are really winter hardy in your yard, and there's no reason not to grow them.
Well, it looks like we've covered another topic.
It's been great, and now it's that time of year again where we've got a little more work to do outside and getting our roses ready. But look at that beautiful photo and, what we can look forward to again next spring.
Well, Diane, appreciate it. It was fun. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Wes, and have a great rest of your day.
You too.